The screaming would not stop. At first I didn't even realize the voice was mine. It echoed through the small room like someone else was shouting through my throat. I was on my knees on the cold floor, shaking uncontrollably. Tears poured down my face in a way I could not control. My hands trembled so badly that I had to press them against the floor just to keep from collapsing completely. That night divided my life into two parts: the man I used to be and the man I became afterward. But before I explain why I was on that floor crying like a broken child, you must understand the man I once was. Because the truth is painful. My name is Kamer, and I used to believe that everything in my life, my home, my possessions, my wife, and even my daughters, existed for one reason: to serve Allah and Islam with absolute devotion. This belief wasn't something casual to me. It wasn't just tradition or culture. It lived deep inside me, in my blood and bones. I believed with my whole heart that strict obedience to religion was the highest form of righteousness. When I walked through my village, I walked with pride. My head was held high because I thought I was one of the most faithful men anyone could meet. I prayed 5 times every day, and when I prayed loudly so people could hear my devotion. I thought that made me holy. At home, I ruled my family with an iron hand. I believed strictness was the same thing as godliness. I had 3 daughters. Even now, saying their names makes my chest tighten with sorrow. Amina, Fatima, and Zainab. Amina was the oldest. She had bright eyes that sparkled whenever she laughed. Her smile could light up our entire home. Fatima, the middle child, was always singing. It didn't matter if she was cooking, cleaning, or helping her mother. Music seemed to follow her everywhere. Zainab was the youngest. She was shy and gentle. Whenever strangers came to our house, she would hide behind her sisters and peek out with curious eyes. I believed I loved them, but the truth is my love was twisted. Instead of seeing them as precious gifts from God, I saw them as tools. Proof of my devotion. Opportunities to demonstrate how committed I was to my faith. Then one day, men from a militant group arrived in our area. They spoke about jihad, about sacrifice, about fighting for Islam. They carried weapons and talked about honor and paradise. To many people, they were frightening. To me, they were heroes. I listened to them with admiration. They were warriors for God, willing to risk everything for their beliefs. In my mind, serving them meant serving Allah himself. And they needed wives. When those men began looking at my daughters, something terrible happened inside my heart. Instead of feeling protective, I felt proud. Proud that my family could serve the cause. Proud that I could give something valuable to these warriors. Amina was only 17 when I arranged her marriage to the first fighter. His name was Khaled. He was 35 years old and a respected commander. To me, it didn't matter that he was twice her age. What mattered was that he was fighting for Islam. When I told Amina about the marriage, she stood quietly in the kitchen. Her hands were covered in flour from baking bread. I expected gratitude. Instead, her face turned pale. Her lips trembled and tears began forming in her eyes. Very softly, she asked if she could wait, just a little longer. She wanted to finish her education. She wanted time. Her voice was barely louder than a whisper. But to me, it sounded like rebellion. Anger rose inside me instantly. I shouted at her, accusing her of disrespecting me and dishonoring Allah. I told her that obedient daughters did not question their fathers. I told her terrible things, things no father should ever say to his child. My wife tried to calm me, but I brushed her away. 2 weeks later, Amina was married. She wore a simple white dress at the ceremony, but she did not smile once. I noticed it, but I ignored it. I told myself she would adjust. 6 months later, the men returned. This time they wanted Fatima. She was only 16. The man who chose her was named Ibrahim. He had scars on his face and cold eyes that made people uncomfortable. Fatima begged me not to agree. She fell to her knees and held onto my legs, crying so hard that her body shook. She said she was afraid of him. She had heard stories about how he treated women. But I hardened my heart. I told her fear was a test from God. I said her tears showed weak faith. The night before her wedding, I heard her crying through the walls of the house. My wife stayed with her for hours, whispering comfort. But I did nothing. Soon afterward, the third man came. Rashid. He was young, only 22, but known throughout the village for his violence. When he asked for 15-year-old Zainab, she didn't cry like her sisters had. She just looked at me. Her eyes were full of terror. That look still haunts me. After all 3 daughters were gone, the house became silent. Before, our home had been filled with laughter and music. Now it felt empty. My wife grew distant. She barely spoke to me. When we went to bed at night, she turned her back toward me. I told myself she was simply missing the girls. But deep inside, I knew the truth. She blamed me. And she was right. Months later, I visited Amina. I hardly recognized her. She had lost so much weight that her cheeks were hollow. Dark circles surrounded her eyes like she hadn't slept in weeks. She said she was fine, but her voice sounded empty. I began to feel something I had never felt before. Doubt. Later, I saw Fatima at a family gathering. When I approached her, she flinched, like she thought I was going to hit her. I had never struck my daughters. So why was she afraid? I pulled Ibrahim aside and asked if everything was okay. He told me she was learning obedience. The way he said it made my stomach twist. But I said nothing. Zainab was even worse. Whenever I saw her, she looked pale and silent, like the life inside her had disappeared. Little by little, my certainty began to crumble. Then one night, I had a dream. I was standing in a vast desert beneath a burning sun. The heat was unbearable. My throat was dry with thirst. In the distance, I saw 3 figures. When I came closer, I realized they were my daughters. They were chained to heavy posts in the sand. Their wrists and ankles were bound with thick, rusted chains. They cried out for help. I ran toward them, trying desperately to break the chains. But they would not break. No matter how hard I pulled, they stayed locked. Then a voice spoke. It came from everywhere at once. It asked me a question. Why did you put your daughters in chains? I tried to explain. I said I had done it for Allah, for religion, for righteousness. But even in the dream, my words sounded hollow. The voice told me the truth. I had not been serving God. I had been serving my own pride. I had cared more about appearing religious than about protecting my children. Then the voice asked one final question. Are you willing to see the truth, even if it destroys everything you believe about yourself? I woke up shaking. From that night forward, my heart began to change. A Christian man named Marcus lived nearby. I had always avoided him. But after the dream, I noticed something different about him. He was kind to everyone. He helped neighbors without expecting anything. His family seemed genuinely happy. One day I spoke to him. He listened patiently while I shared my confusion. Then he prayed for me. It was the first time I heard someone speak to God like a loving father instead of a distant ruler. He told me about Jesus, about forgiveness, about love that didn't need to be earned. Those words stayed with me. Weeks later, overwhelmed by guilt, I cried out to Jesus in the empty room where my daughters once slept. I confessed everything, and something happened. I felt a peace I had never known before. That night, I gave my life to Jesus. The weight of guilt lifted from my heart. But my story did not suddenly become easy. When my community learned about my conversion, they rejected me. Friends turned away. People insulted me in the streets. My daughters' husbands banned me from seeing them. I lost them a second time. Yet through all of this, I held on to hope. Because I had discovered a truth stronger than my mistakes. The love of Jesus. Years have passed. I am now 53. My daughters are grown women, still trapped in difficult marriages. But I pray for them every day. Sometimes faith means believing even when miracles take years. My story is not finished yet, because my hope is not in circumstances. My hope is in Jesus Christ, the same yesterday, today, and forever.